In this video, we're going to talk about what we like to call closing the triangle. Now, the triangle has to do between your knees, your hips, and your shoulders during takeoff of your vertical jump. Now, this is extremely important because it costs athletes around 2 to 6 inches on their vert. So if you can perfect this, expect to add between 2 to 6 inches to your vertical jump. Now, closing the triangle refers to the triangle, like I said, between your knees, your hips, and your shoulders. And RJ is going to demonstrate for us what it means to close the triangle during your takeoff of your vertical jump, okay? So RJ is going to come in at about half speed, and right before he takes off, RJ, as a 2-foot jumper, is going to extend his body and extend his hips, okay? As you can see here, RJ has extended his hips and closed the triangle. This is extremely important because it increases the speed of his jump and the vertical approach of his jump, okay? So RJ here has extended his hips and he's closed the triangle. So right now, there's a straight line between RJ's knees, his hips, and his shoulders, okay? This is what I mean by closing the triangle. Right now, there is no triangle. The line that runs between the shoulders, the hips, and the knees is perpendicular to the ground. There is no triangle. But if RJ were to stay bent at the hips during takeoff, like a lot of amateur and novice athletes do, then now you can see there is a triangle, okay? Look at RJ's knee, look at his hip, and look at his shoulder. Okay, you can form a triangle between the three. And it's important that you close this triangle by violently hinging those hips. Now you increase your speed and you increase the vertical distance that you take off from when you jump. All right, this is extremely important that you hinge those hips and close that triangle. And it's also very important on the 1-foot vertical jump. So if we walk over to Aaron, who's going to demonstrate closing the triangle on the 1-foot vertical jump, it's extremely similar. So Aaron's going to come in at about half speed and take off of his left foot, okay? So there it is. Now right now, Aaron's bent over a little bit, and if we connect his knee, his hip, and his shoulder, there's a triangle here, okay? Shoulder, hip, knee, okay? See that triangle? But when Aaron takes off, he extends those hips and boom, all right? So right before Aaron takes off, I know I'm kind of putting him in an awkward position to balance, but if we now connect these dots, shoulder, hip, take off knee, there is no triangle. He has closed the triangle by hinging those hips, violently extending those hips, accelerating himself into the vertical jump, okay? So once again, Aaron, just take a step back. So now we're gonna take off, but we're gonna stay bent over and not hinging the hips. So bring that knee up. So this is the knee that he's driving with. Right now, there is a triangle, okay? Knee, hip, shoulder. But when Aaron extends that hip and he takes off like a proper jumper, he extends fully, okay? He hinges those hips and he extends that hip. So if I were to jump off of my left leg here, it would look like this, okay? Extending that hip, popping those hips, closing that triangle, all right? So once again, this allows you to increase the speed of your vertical jump and allows you to increase the vertical distance that you take off from in your vertical jump. Like I said, this is extremely important and it costs athletes 2 to 6 inches on their vert. Now let's take a look at 2 different examples, both the 2-foot vertical jump and the 1-foot vertical jump, successfully closing that triangle at takeoff. In order to close the triangle during your jump, you need to work on putting your antagonist hip flexor muscles to sleep. And we're gonna do exactly that with a static hip flexor stretch. Now to perform this stretch, Aaron is going to demonstrate, just get down on one knee and you're stretching out that front part of your hip. Okay, so Aaron's stretching out that hip flexor because these hip flexors resist that violent hip hinge motion that we need to close the triangle. So by doing the static hip flexor stretch, we're essentially what we like to call putting that hip flexor to sleep so that it does not resist us when we go for that triple extension and we go for that hip hinge movement. So Aaron's going to hold this for 30 seconds and then he's going to switch sides. Make sure he does both sides. You can do 2 to 3 sets on both sides before you do your jumping drills or before you do any sort of plyometric vertical jumping. Like I said, this puts those hip flexors to sleep so that we can more easily perform that hip hinge movement and close that triangle as we jump. Now the next exercise that Aaron's going to demonstrate, which is great for working on that hip hinge movement to close that triangle once again, is using a medicine ball. We just have a basketball here. If you don't have a medicine ball, you can also use a basketball. And Aaron's going to do overhead medicine ball tosses. So I'm just going to demonstrate. Basically, the movement that we're looking for is that triple extension and closing that triangle by hinging those hips, okay? So Aaron, you can demonstrate here. I didn't throw it, but we're just tossing that up as high as we possibly can by hinging our hips, which is going to force us to close that triangle. So Aaron, go down and pause about right up, right here. So as you can see, Aaron would normally toss this ball, but I just want to show you how he's closing his triangle here. We have his shoulders, his hips, and his knees, which are all in a line perpendicular to the floor. Okay, once again, this is a great drill for that hip hinge movement, but if Aaron wasn't closing off that triangle and he was like this, then once again, we have that triangle. Shoulders, hips, knees, okay? Look at that triangle. This is bad, okay? We need to hinge those hips and close that triangle so that we increase our speed and our vertical height on our vertical jump. So Aaron, let's see this at full speed.